And that sound means we're back for yet another week and yet another edition of American Football Newz. This is the NFL edition. We just completed Week 10. A look back at the previous week. We had several great games on the docket this week, and Week 10 concluded last night with a surprisingly good matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Giants. But we'll take things back to last week and our first game from Week 10. Our first game from Week 10 featured the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Carolina Panthers last Thursday. And to say that the Steelers were perfect was an understatement. Yet again, Ben Roethlisberger comes up big, throwing for 5 touchdowns, helping the Steelers put up 52 points offensively against the number 2 team in the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers. The Pittsburgh Steelers really on a roll after a rocky start at the beginning of the season, and Roethlisberger starting to look like an MVP and has moved up into the MVP conversation. At last glance, he was number 4 or 5 overall, depending on who your source of information is. Roethlisberger last Thursday throwing for 328 yards and again 5 touchdowns. And that is to complement his perfect passer rating. He's done this a couple of times in his career, and it's good to see that he can still pull that magic out when the Steelers need him. The Detroit Lions played this last weekend. Their season pretty much over. A lot of people thinking that if they could have beaten the Bears, they could have stayed in that NFC North conversation and possibly made the playoffs. However, Trubisky and company are playing way too well right now. Matt Stafford and his O-line suffering and struggling. That defense having to play way too much. The Lions are yet again in a rebuild state. They claim that they're pretty close to where they need to be, but you got to question Bob Quinn and you got to question Martha Ford and what their intentions with the Detroit Lions are. Another big blowout win. The New Orleans Saints continue to march on, and Drew Brees continues his bid for MVP of the NFL. They took on the Cincinnati Bengals on Saturday. The Bengals not doing too bad themselves this year, second in the AFC North behind the Steelers at 5-4. But Drew Brees throwing for 265 yards and 4 touchdowns was simply too much to overcome. Also throw in that Cincinnati had to use their backup quarterback. It just makes the day that much harder if you're a Bengals player. The Cleveland Browns were able to pick up a win this past weekend over the Atlanta Falcons, 28-16. The biggest shock of the weekend in the NFL, that is, was the New England Patriots, first in the AFC East, took on the Tennessee Titans, who are second in the AFC South, behind the Houston Texans, and the score is almost unbelievable. At the end of the day, Tennessee ended up whipping the New England Patriots 34-10. It wasn't even close. After the first quarter, it was 17-3, and New England was never able to catch up or get past that very, very tough, very aggressive Tennessee Titans defense. Corey Davis being the number 1 wide receiver of the day for either team. The former Western Michigan Bronco had a great game, having 125 receiving yards, 7 receptions, and a touchdown. The Titans are still in the picture to make the playoffs, but have a tough road ahead of them and have to get over the Houston Texans, who are playing very, very well at this point in the season. A close game that that happened this past weekend, I apologize. The Indianapolis Colts took on the Jacksonville Jaguars. These are two teams that have kind of underplayed at this point in time. Maybe not so much Indianapolis. The expectations for them not nearly as high as Jacksonville, who went to the AFC Championship game last year, only to lose to the New England Patriots. Jacksonville 3-6 on the year. Indianapolis 4-5. This game would be decided by a field goal. And Indy doing all their scoring in the first half of the game, not having to put up any more points in the second half, was able to hold on to the win 29-26 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Kansas City Chiefs continued their winning ways, this time adding the Arizona Cardinals to their list of victims. The Chiefs pulled off the win 26-14. Two teams from New York met this weekend, and neither team is very good. But somebody had to win this game. Both teams sitting at 3-7. One team fourth in the AFC East, the other third in the AFC East. So really, this was just a game to determine who was going to move up and who was going to move down. The Bills not playing very well right now, struggling at the quarterback position. The Jets seemingly struggling at everywhere else. Can't get anything going either. This, in theory, was going to be a bit of a snoozer of a game. It turned out to be quite one-sided. The Buffalo Bills put up 41 points, the New York Jets only 10, and the Bills were led by running back LaShawn McCoy, who had 113 rushing yards, 5 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. The best that the Jets could muster would be Crowell, running back Isaac Crowell. 19 rushing yards, 18 receiving yards, 2 receptions, and a touchdown. Not exactly what you would call a dominant performance. And I apologize, it's not Isaiah Crowell, it's Isaiah Crowell. So I apologize for the mispronunciation of the player. All right, the Washington Redskins took on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Redskins able to improve their record, basically shutting out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, holding them to only a field goal and winning 16-3. The LA Chargers took on the Oakland Raiders, a battle of California, although it was one-sided because Oakland couldn't buy a win even if they wanted to. The Chargers coming out on top, 20-16. Phillip Rivers looking pretty good in this particular game. However, the top man for the Chargers was Melvin Gordon III, 93 rushing yards, 72 receiving yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. Very difficult to overcome if you're Derek Carr and the Oakland Raiders. The Green Bay Packers got back into their winning ways, this time defeating the Miami Dolphins this past Sunday, 31-12. And if you were a fan of offense, then you were a big fan of the Seattle Seahawks Los Angeles Rams game this past weekend. Their defenses forgot to come, but the offenses showed up and put on quite a show, actually. The Rams, having only one loss this season, took on Seattle, who has been up and down, but is still holding on to that second spot in the NFC West. Obviously, LA, the top team in the NFC West. Russell Wilson having a fairly good day for the Seahawks, 176 passing yards and 92 yards on the ground. Something we haven't seen since his days at Wisconsin. He also had 3 touchdowns on the day. However, Todd Gurley's day was a bit better, and this is why the Rams held on to the 5-point win. 120 rushing yards, 40 receiving yards on 3 receptions, and 1 touchdown. The Rams able to stay on top and pull out the victory, 36-31. They improved to 9-1 on the season. So there are a couple of teams here in the NFL that with a win or two will punch their ticket for the playoffs already. And the Rams definitely one of those teams that could potentially do that. So Sunday night concluded with a game that was built up pretty much all week. The Dallas Cowboys sort of reeling and falling, and can they stay in contention, and are they really overhyped, and can Dak Prescott secure his job along with Sean Garrett? And the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles just are not playing like Super Bowl champions. Inconsistent play, up and down quarterbacks, and a defense that at times has struggled this year. This game had all the makings of one team rising to the occasion and the other team falling to the wayside for the rest of the year. And most incumbents predicted that Philadelphia would be the one to rise to the occasion. This was a great game that took place very, very slow at the beginning of the game, and then the offense is absolutely exploding in the second half. Ezekiel Elliott, the running back for the Cowboys, had a banger of a day against a Philadelphia defense that prides itself on stopping the run. But when you have Zeke in the background, it's very, very hard to keep him contained for any amount of time. 151 yards rushing, 36 receiving yards on 6 receptions. He had 2 touchdowns to help Dallas to that 27-20 win over Philadelphia. Philadelphia's top player wasn't Carson Wentz, their quarterback. It was their tight end, Zach Ertz, who had a tremendous day, making very important, very big catches on 3rd down or 4th down, or helping to extend those plays to move the Philadelphia's struggling offense down the field against a Cowboys defense that is one of the best in the league. Ertz having 145 reception yards on 14 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So if you had him on your fantasy team, you had a good day. You had a lot of points. However, his efforts were too little, too late, and the Cowboys were able to hold on to a win, 27-20, over the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Now, as stated at the beginning of the episode, Week 10 concluded last night with a game between 2 teams that aren't very good, that wish they were very good, and somebody had to win this game. The New York Giants, who are now 2-7 and 4th in the NFC East, took on the now 2-8 San Francisco 49ers, who are 4th in the NFC West. Literally a tale of 2 coasts. East Coast meets West Coast. And this game was kind of good, kind of bad. It had its moments. Eli kind of showing glimpses of his former glory. The 49ers underachieving, just like they have all year. But at the end of the day, it turned out to be a fairly good football game. Odell Beckham Jr. was the top man for the Giants, having 73 receiving yards on 4 receptions, but most importantly, 2 touchdowns. The top man for the 49ers wasn't the quarterback and wasn't one of the running backs. It was actually their running back, Matt I'm going to slaughter the name, Breida. Had a very, very good game against a Giants defense that has at times shown to be very, very tough. 101 rushing yards, 31 receiving yards on 3 receptions. He too had 2 touchdowns, but simply not enough to overcome that powerful OBJ performance. And the 49ers losing last night to the New York Giants 23-27. Week 11 is upon us, and we take a quick look ahead to the 3 key games this next particular week. That would be Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and the week concluding with Monday Night Football. Thursday Night Football will kick off this week, November 15th, kickoff scheduled for 8:20 p.m., and will feature the Green Bay Packers, who are 4-4-1, taking on the Seattle Seahawks, who are 4-5. You can catch this game on either Fox or the NFL Network, and it is my prediction that the Seattle Seahawks will come out on top of the Green Bay Packers. The Sunday Night Football matchup was a flexed one that got moved into position this past week. The top team in the NFC North will take on the second best team in the NFC North. And those 2 teams, the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. This game will take place Sunday, November 18th. Kickoff scheduled for 8:20 p.m. The Bears 6-3, the Vikings 5-3-1. This should be a decent game. However, I don't think Chicago's defense will be able to hold off Kirk Cousins and company for very long. I see the Vikings winning this one in a very close one. And with time running out, we conclude with our Monday night game next week. This will happen Monday, November 19th. Kickoff scheduled for 8:15 p.m. and is a banger of a matchup. The Chiefs will take on the Rams, both 9-1. Somebody has to lose. Thank you for listening. Check out our NCAA podcast later on today and keep watching.